Join us today on Beyond the Lair, where we have a conversation with Chief Willie Sellars from the Williams Lake First Nation. Not only is Willie a prominent chief, an astute business leader, an advocate for youth, sport, healing, and a true leader and believer in what a better Canadian society can look like today. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Lair. My name is Gina Jackson Montgomery, so pleased to be here with you today. And like to introduce my co-host.
I'm Dean Montgomery. I'm Métis Cree from Northern Saskatchewan, and great to see you, Chief Willie Sellars.
We are thrilled to have you, Chief Willie Sellars. If anyone doesn't know who you are, we're about to tell you, and you've also been living under a rock for a very long time if you haven't heard of the great Chief Willie Sellars. And do not get shocked by how youthful his appearance is, because this is crazy. Willie Sellars was born and raised in Williams Lake, BC, and is a member of the Williams Lake First Nation. He was elected to the Williams Lake First Nation Council at the young, ripe age of 23 in 2008. Willie was one of the youngest elected councillors in Williams Lake First Nation's history. After serving 10 years on council, he was elected as the chief of the Williams Lake First Nation in 2018 and is currently in your second term now. In his previous work experience, Willie worked as a Wildland Firefighter for the Ministry of Forests, Lands and Natural Resource Operations before returning to his community to assume the position of Special Project Coordinator in the Williams Lake First Nation's Economic Development Department. During this time, he was responsible for new business initiatives flowing from impact benefit agreements, engagement with proponents in the traditional territories and community, and authentic consultation for major Williams Lake First Nation projects. In addition to your amazing political history and business acumen, Willie is also a published author of Dip Netting with Dad, which won a Moonbeam Children's Book Award and was shortlisted for the Chocolate Lily Shining Willow and Ontario Library Association Award. His second book, Hockey with Dad, was released in the fall of 2021. He enjoys time with his family and his partner and his 5 kids, powwow dancing, playing hockey with the Williams Lake Stampeders, attending community events at Williams Lake First Nations, hunting, dip net fishing, and just recently had a documentary where I believe there was an award for best directing, and on and on. So welcome to our program, Chief Willie.
Thanks for having me. I mean, it is, I'm pretty blessed in the journey. I've always said that my biggest blessing is I have good timing on a lot of the things that have happened in my life, whether it's, the filming of Sugarcane and being a part of that, or being elected in as chief and having this great mentorship group that I was able to work under while I was a councillor and as I became the chief of the community. It's an exciting time in this country when it comes to Indigenous politics as well. So being a part of it and enjoying every minute of it is what gets me up every single day.
It's amazing what you've accomplished, and we've had this is I think almost our 20th podcast, and we've talked to so many different business leaders. We've talked to entrepreneurs, we've talked to business leaders, we've talked to industry leaders, we've talked to hereditary chief Gibby Jacob, we've talked to Chief Ian Campbell, and now you are our third chief that we've spoken to. And what we'd like to tell our viewers and our listeners as well is, where did you begin this journey? Tell us a little bit about your upbringing and who your influences are, and then we're going to walk forward to where you are now.
Yeah, it's been an interesting one. I grew up on the reserve, lived on the reserve my whole life. My dad is Indigenous, and my mom gained her status through marriage, but she's a non-Indigenous woman, and she raised us our entire lives, me and my sisters, and every single morning, you would hear the politics talk at the table, at the dinner table. You would hear, the hatred and the animosity towards chiefs and councils, and how they're not doing a good enough job. And you get this in every single Indigenous community that you go to. There's always those tables And right at an early age, when I was young, you would hear those conversations, and you're living in an Indigenous community. That's what you know, and it always piqued my interest. If I'm ever going to make a change in this community, it's going to be by being in one of those seats, whether it's on council or whether it's as the chief. And that seemed far-fetched at the time, but as you get older and you start taking the teachings that you had from your mom and eventually my dad and my uncles and my family and friends, and you start becoming a leader unknowingly almost. I remember we would, for example, we loved dip net fishing, and we would go out and we would catch hundreds of fish, and we were so proud that we caught them, and when we brought them home we would just distribute them to whoever wanted them. Some people would take 5, some people take 20, some people would take more. And we didn't realize, I mean, we were catching fish because we loved to catch fish, and we were giving them away because people needed them, but also because, we didn't want to clean hundreds of fish at the same time. So that those little bit of leadership cues started at an early age. The funny part of those conversations at the dinner table, those were all arguably the radicals in community. And those same radicals that were calling down councils back then when I was a kid, they call me down to this day. And the irony of that conversation is those are the individuals that piqued my interest and got me, down this path of wanting to be a leader and make a difference in my community. And we pray for them in the sweat, and we respect them and acknowledge them. And we hope that they will come online one day and be supportive of what the vision is of WLFN. But there is just so much other work and progress that we need to do and that we are doing, that hopefully they one day acknowledge. I'm not giving them the credit at all, but they're the ones that started me down the path. And it's individuals like I could go down the list of former chiefs that I was able to mentor under, whether it was Nancy Sandy or the late Rick Gilbert or Willie Alphonse Jr. or, Alice Abbey or the great Anne Louie, who've really guided me in this journey. And always thankful for those individuals opening themselves up and giving me that advice, and, not challenging or pushing me aside, and being a part of that mentoring process. I mean, that's not easy for a leader. I can imagine there's going to be a youth that's going to come along one day that is going to be better suited for the position than me. And I want to make sure that, if that individual is keen and wanting to be in this seat, that I'll be a part of that historical mentorship group that has helped make our community so awesome.
How old were you when you were stepped into? I think you were working with Chief Ann Louie at the time when we had first met. I think it was, I don't know when, 2012 maybe. And you were a project manager then, is that right? Special projects
Yeah,
manager?
I went to university. I went to Thompson Rivers University in Kamloops, and I finished my 3rd year. I have 5 kids, and my first child was about to be born, and it really changed the way that I thought about moving forward in life. The school didn't become a priority; it was working became the priority, and we see that a lot. I mean, looking back, it is an interesting path that I took, but coming home and working as a wildland firefighter was also one of the coolest and best jobs that I ever had. I did that for 6 summers before transitioning into the special project coordinator position in our economic development department. And that's when I met arguably my most influential person in my life. That was Mr. Kirk Dressler. Mr. Aaron Higginbottom was a part of that team, and the late Byron Louie was also part of that economic development team. And it was Ann's vision to start an economic development department similar to what you see in a West Bank First Nation, for example, and model ourselves as after those successful communities that we see in this country, and one that's close to us. And it was working under an individual like Kirk that really set me down this path of how I was molded into this leader that I am now. it was always putting me in front of those crowds and assisting my public speaking skills, presenting on some of the things that we were doing and what we wanted to do, and what we eventually did at WLFN. And it was a vision of Anne that started that department and gave me this opportunity as an employee with WLFN. I was sitting on council around the same time, and I was able to grow up in this machine. And it wasn't just Anne; it was those councils that were also in our administration at the time that helped push this vision along. And to be a part of that growth from where we were compared to where we are now. I mean, we have over 100 staff now. Our monthly payroll is over 300K per month, and it's a massive machine that is fed by success. We have successful businesses. We sign impact benefit agreements and create partnerships, and we look at how we can continue to grow this machine. But then at the same time, that economic success that we're seeing is contributing to the success that we're also seeing around ceremony, language, culture revitalization, and all of these things work in unison, and to have them growing, to see the progress at the same time is the one thing that keeps a guy up at night. And we have a lot of important people in a lot of important positions with a great council and a lot of progression in the way that we vision things moving forward into the future. But it's the sustainability of this machine that we always keep in mind. We need these people in these positions for this work to work, and that's always the biggest fear, that governance piece. And that's the vision of our current council, is to firm that up so it'll be a lot easier for anybody else stepping into the seat moving forward.
Yeah, and like any great leader, you are giving the accolades to the people that support you, and it's an important part of being that leadership. And Kirk is, as we've known forever, is just an amazing person, and Chief Byron now, and that whole group. So amazing.
Absolutely. And I think with every great leader, you put in your time. And you were in council for 10 years. At 23, became a councilor. At 33, became a chief. It's your second term.
Second term.
And so to sit there for a decade and take in the mentorship and the great leaders and the decisions and the progression to work on projects prior to this, and to see where your nation has grown, what do you think the biggest shift is in the community now, that has led to the success of Williams Lake First Nation?
Yeah, I remember, economic development used to be this massive education that we would have in community. And, it was always, well, what are we doing about the land and the environment and like all the other things that are also very important? It's like, okay, well, we need to see the success in order to invest in these other things that mean a lot more than money and relationships to the community. And it was funny, it came full circle. Actually, we're in the middle of going through the design phase of building a park. We're calling it Reconciliation Park. It's going to be in the city of Williams Lake. It's a smaller park, but it's still going to be a $1.2 million investment. It's going to signify the importance of reconciliation in the city of Williams Lake, a welcome to Secwepemc. And it's also going to signify the importance of the specific claim win that we had, that is going to set our community up for future generations. It's a $135 million settlement over the wrongful displacement of our ancestors in the city of Williams Lake. And one of the pieces of feedback that we start to hear at the community engagement sessions is around, well, is this park going to make us any money? Why aren't we thinking about putting a business there instead of a park? And it was like, wow, those kind of conversations didn't happen before. The community is now cognizant of what success can do to the betterment and the health and wellness and well-being of our community. Everything costs money nowadays. I mean, we have 4 cultural workers that do an amazing job for us, but they need to provide for their families. Clarence Louie has these great quotes around, the economic horse drives the social cart, or pulls the social cart. And modern day warriors or people who put food on the table and go to work every day and provide for their families and put a roof over their head, et cetera, et cetera. And that's something that we have to keep in mind. And that education wasn't easy to get to. You know, success in using our political leverage as Indigenous peoples who have rights and title over this traditional territory, you know, that educational piece of how we leverage that into success, and then of course bring up the health and wellness of our community through a number of different pillars is is a big part of the transition that we've seen here. People are starting to understand and they support. I mean, I got in by acclamation at the last election, and it's because of the support that we see with the administration that we have here. You know, that mentorship is key, but you know, it's carrying on the vision of former councils and then making sure that we have that modern day spin on what that vision is and can be moving forward. You know, I'm so stoked to get up every day and come to the office. It doesn't hurt that I have this amazing view of the whole valley and our brand new administration building. But what we're continuing to see over the generations is things happening and progress is happening, healing is happening. And although it's not happening overnight, you know, it's still happening, and the community sees that. And that's why we get the support that we get come voting time, but why we get the support that we get in everything that we're doing in the region, not just from our community, but from the entire region of non-Indigenous people that live here too. And people are starting to properly understand that you support First Nation, it's not just going to lead to the success of that First Nation, but it's going to lead to the success of the region, because our money stays here, and they understand that now.
Yeah, amazing what you've done to the entire community, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, within you know central BC. You know, one thing that we, and I think everyone needs to recognize, is a lot of your success comes based upon the fact that you care, and that you care about people. You know, and you really care about youth, and you're a big supporter of it. So maybe you can tell us a little about what prompted you to create dip knitting with that and hockey with that. How did that come about?
Yeah, two books. First of all, anyone that wants to get into children's books, there's no money in children's books, which wasn't what it was about. It was about telling an Indigenous story that would be relatable to the kids of our territory here in the interior. Trying to find any literature to read to my kids that reflects and holds up Indigenous peoples from this territory, you just couldn't find any. And you know, that's why we built the book or built the books. The illustrator that has come online for those books is, you know, one of my best friends. Met him firefighting, actually. Talk about the timing that I've had and the people that have come in my path over my life is pretty special. But you know, we wanted to build something that we could read to our kids and that will sit on the mantle and will live forever. And it was, you know, a couple of things that I know best, which is hockey, which is dip netting. It's also just happened to be two of my favorite things in life. You know, dip netting season is almost here, and there's this fear right now that we're not going to be able to fish because of the salmon population and the stocks and the impacts because of the big bar slide and other things that are happening in the Fraser River and down into to the ocean. But you know, it is a big part of our balance as Indigenous peoples, being able to celebrate those fish, being able to celebrate getting out onto the water and being part of the land. And then on the other side, it's about, you know, telling this amazing story about, you know, a Canadian sport that every single Indigenous community in this country holds up in high regards, and arguably every single Canadian in general does. Telling our story is historically how we would pass down the teachings, that oral history. So, I mean, it checks all of those boxes, and we're going to continue to write them. I have a couple more in the queue, actually. I'm like a big time author now. I have a lit agent, as they call it. So she kind of handles everything. She works for Cooks McDermott, and her name is Rachel. She's an awesome lady, and really looking forward to, you know, getting onto a platform that's bigger so that our stories are going to be able to be told on a bigger platform down the road and into the future. because that's really what it's all about, like this feel good stuff of success that's happening in our Indigenous communities. I live on the res. I've always lived on the res, and the hope is that you inspire, those kids. There's a bigger world out there that they need to experience, but also at the same time to be proud of who they are, and where they come from. I always say I'm a proud Secwepemc man. I'm proud Williams Lake First Nation, but I'm also a proud Canadian, and that's not something that's missed in any conversations that I have. We get to grow up in the best country in the world. It ain't perfect, but it's a lot better than most, and that's something that we have to remember and not take for granted.
Oh, so nice. I have to say one more thing, Gina, here is that we need to give a shout out to Robin Lucas and Deb, and Ryan and Ty and the Lucas family, because we worked with Alltech, but he's the one who introduced us all, and we're so grateful for that because Robin's a great mentor to ours, and he's the first person when we met that told me that Willie is an awesome goalie. And you're still doing it.
Yeah, I still try and stay in shape. I get to skate with those kids once a week at actually Robin Lucas's son's facility, Total Ice, which is a year-round ice rink that my kids get to celebrate hockey whenever they want, all summer, as much as they want. It's cool that you bring up Robin, because a big part of our journey and healing as a community is the infrastructure that we've been able to build here, whether it's our commercial and residential development project, which is spearheaded, building a tax base and educating leasing on Indigenous lands in the north and interior here, or else it's building our Powell Arbor, where Robin comes in, the build out of our ball diamond. It's building these spaces to give these young kids a place where they can, be kids and stay busy and stay out of trouble. All of these things cost money, and we're definitely not able to deliver these things historically in our communities without the support of partners and friends and family, which is what it feels like in these small rural communities. When Robin and Altec and you came to the table and stepped up and helped us build that ball diamond, put lights in and proper irrigation and a place that we can hold up and have a lot of fun at. I mean, that was a massive milestone for us, and really instilling that pride into those kids in our community and keeping those spaces, pristine, and bringing our friends and family down there to show them off, and really, I mean that's all healing, and that's really what it's all about. It's not about personal gain in these instances. It's about building humans. And when we start talking about building stuff for the youth, we're building humans so that they could be good people one day, breaking that generational cycle and combating that trauma and intergenerational trauma that we see in every single walk of life in this country when it comes to looking at the history and legacy of residential schools and that impact that's still lingering today. We gotta keep doing the things, as our ARC team would say, and we gotta keep moving forward and seeing that progress on a day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. And I think we've done a really good job at it. And we haven't been able to, again, do it by ourselves. We've had a lot of very awesome people step up and be a part of it.
And you're so humble too, because and Robin Lucas we are his biggest fans for sure. But you just won a BC Indigenous Achievement Award for the archaeological company, correct?
For sugarcane.
Yep.
Sugarcane.
Yeah, sugarcane archaeology. It's one of our massive success stories. Talk about being stewards of the land, and it's a resource-based economy in Williams Lake. It's mining, it's forestry, it's ranching. How do we diversify that and give our members an opportunity to provide for their families, be modern day warriors, as Chief Clarence would say? Archaeology is one of them. We have 40, 50, 60 people employed throughout the summer. We have 20 plus full-time positions. We have 3 archaeologists on staff. And what we've been able to do is find this niche for a number of individuals. And sugarcane archaeology is one of them. Unity Cannabis is another one. Sugarcane Cannabis is another one. We have under our Dev Corp, we have security, we have medic services. I mean, you really go down the list of these different opportunities that we've been able to put together for membership to provide for their families. And one of the coolest things about having that conversation is we've had individuals, young guys and gals especially, they filter through and they're trying to find their path. And then we see they'll stick, let's say, in sugarcane cannabis in our cultivation facility, or they'll stick in sugarcane archaeology and become this massive success story where they're not just, in the trenches, they're moving up and supervising crews and earning a living and having a career and talking about, how much healing has happened in their lives because they're out on the land every single day, finding artifacts and instilling that pride back into who they are and being a part of their own education of the history of Secwepemc people. And then bragging about those experiences to non-Indigenous people. And really you see full circle that they're delivering the service that is an integral part of any development that's happening in our traditional territories. We have those boots on the ground. Sugarcane archaeology has done that. And it's such a massive success story when we look at revenue builders for our community, but just, opportunities in general. The more success that we see on initiatives like that, the more it empowers and really inspires our council to support them. We incubate these businesses in the beginning and then they become self-sustaining. And you hold them up with a BC Reconciliation Award. I mean, that was one of the coolest things about that award was sitting at that table and seeing the pride around the table of those young Indigenous individuals that were a part of something bigger than they could ever imagined. And being in the big city, fancy dinner, fancy hotel, you don't get that experience often. And sometimes as leadership, we take a fancy hotel and a trip to Vancouver for granted because we have that opportunity almost whenever we want because of the work that we do. And to see our young people get to experience that is pretty special. And it just empowers them more. I think I keep saying empowers, but that's really what it's about. It's a part of that healing journey that we're on.
I know we tonight there's a Bears Lair episode on, a new one, and is Harlan on tonight?
Harlan Fisher.
Yeah.
He is a hockey player and also a business owner for Smudge the Blades. And there's all these connections. And I know prior to this, we talked a little bit about how he has influenced you and how these connections have connections. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I will forever be a fan of Harlan Kingfisher. I'm praying for him tonight on Bears Lair that he wins. He deserves it. He really did me this solid one year. So there's this. I play goalie, like you said, and I'm better than average, I guess. But I mean, I work hard. Like I skate all the time.
We're goalie parents, so we understand.
Yeah, we understand.
Yeah, it's like the bane of you talk to my spouse about hockey. She's sick of hockey probably because of how much I play personally. And it's about my balance, my mental health. So I'm a little bit selfish that way. It's something I'd absolutely love to do. So that also contributes to this conversation. But, I've never had that chance to play in the national championship, which is the Fred Sasakamoose tournament. Getting older, to be in this position, to play at that level. So it takes that much more work to stay in shape. Long story short, there was a team from Pessamit, Montano. There's what they were called. Pessamit is an Indigenous community in Quebec. And they reached out to Harlan Kingfisher, who I knew. I had bought his sweater, Real Deadly Goalie. He's got some really awesome slogans, catchy, and he's just supporting Indigenous. He's got a great story too. But they reached out to him and they asked him if he knew any goalies, and he said, "I know the best Indian goalie in British Columbia," and he gave him my name. I mean, it was probably a bit of a debate on who the best Indian goalie is in BC. I
Carey
mean,
Price from here, but you know.
Yeah.
yeah.
He was busy.
Yeah, Carey was busy. I'm probably in like the top 25, top 50 maybe. But Harlan put my name forward, and I got to go on this epic trip to
Sorry, I was going to interrupt.
Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
We're saying you're second to Carey.
Yeah.
We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah,
Leave it at
okay.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I'll take number 2 over. Anyways, so I got to go to the Francis Saccamoose National Championship and play for Pessamit, and we went to the semifinals, which, it's a 40-team tournament nowadays. You gotta, it's a battle. It's a lot of games to go to the final, and we went to the semis against Roddy Ross in Canoe Lake, and that was the year that Roddy Ross was playing out of his mind. He won MVP of the tournament. He won a shootout in the final and was a national champion. And I got to play against him. I got to play against another amazing goalie in that tournament named Gavin Bjorklund. He was drafted by Washington. You see the talent in Indian country when you go to big events like that, and it puts things into perspective of how small Indian country is, but how many amazing athletes we have. And I never would have seen or experienced any of that without Harlan putting my name forward. So I always say I'll be forever grateful for that man. And it just happens that he has an amazing business on the side that he deserves every bit of success that he has.
Oh, absolutely.
And like yourself, he's a family man as well.
Yeah.
A lot of kids, a lot of great business acumen, and a really, really amazing heart. And just for all the listeners out here too, besides not making any money as an author, there's no money in TV either. So zero.
The best part about books for me, the biggest probably benefit that I've seen to date is we did a book tour in 2015 when we had a lot more time on our hands. And we did 8 weeks straight, me and the illustrator, 73 schools, over 100 presentations. And we were doing full gyms, K to 7. And it's really where I was able to hone in my public speaking skills. So with becoming an author came this very important politician skill of public speaking. So there's a benefit of that. There's a benefit of telling the story. So it's how do I always say it? I say the creator compensates me in other ways.
Yeah.
I love that. And telling stories is a big part of who we are culturally. And I know that you're going to know what you're adding to your repertoire of talents right now is storytelling. And it's not about dip netting and it's not about hockey, but it is about residential schools, and it is about the history that a lot of people are uncomfortable with and that we don't like to talk about. Because we like to go forward, but this is a story that needs to be told. And let's talk a little bit about the documentary that was done, and let's talk a little bit about our history and how you're telling that story and where the documentary came from.
Yeah, so we have a documentary that's coming out called Sugarcane. It was picked up by National Geographic. It premiered at Sundance Film Festival. It'll be going out for theatrical release this summer, and then it'll be on every streaming platform, or not every streaming platform. It'll be out on Disney Plus by the late summer, fall. It was a really wild and heavy journey that we went on for the making of this film. I mean, it started with the announcement of the 215 at KIB, and then us starting our own investigation into the St. Joseph's Mission Residential School, which is located 6 kilometers from our community here of Sugarcane. And, we were approached by this group out of LA and New York. One of the directors happened to be a Secwepemc man who went to Brown, who is an award-winning journalist, who is from Canham Lake, whose dad went to that school, and he's a big part of actually the film itself, is his story and his dad's story and his grandma's story. The film crew, we signed on to film and I guess, document this investigative work so that our community could see in the beginning, and then it grew into so much more than that. It grew into this story of healing and truth telling, and just, you know, you have healing as a part of that, but you know, a lot of triggers and trauma throughout the film. They followed us around for 2.5 years, which was also a massive inconvenience if you talk to my spouse and my kids to an extent, because they were everywhere. I mean, they had hundreds and hundreds of footage just of me and my family. And you know, honestly, one of my biggest fears was being like the front and center point of this film, because, you know, my story isn't near as important as like a Julian, Ned, and a Rick, who are like the main staples of what the Sugarcane documentary is, them telling their story and you getting to experience their trauma firsthand, and just how horrific the history and legacy of residential schools is in this country. Because what you see in the film is just a snapshot, but what you see is a story and stories that are relatable in every single Indigenous community in this country. And, you know, when we talk about denialism and the movements that have been made, questioning and challenging the history of the trauma and the atrocities that have happened at those schools in this country, you really, you know, get an education in this film on on how we can move forward and heal. Because, you know, reconciliation is an education, and we have to be able to tell the truth in order to heal. And our elders and our survivors, they need to be held up, and you have to inspire them and empower them to tell their story, because we need to hear it. And that was a big part of what this film was. You know, we shouldn't be embarrassed about our past, and we shouldn't be ashamed of our past. And you know, a lot of our elders are, and a lot of our survivors are, and that's something, that stigma that we have to get past. And maybe if it's a film like this that will help inspire those individuals to tell their story and allow us to be a part of their healing, and help us, you know, find our healing and break that generational gap and deal with our intergenerational trauma, and see future generations thriving because we told that truth, or we're a part of that truth telling. I think it's an important part of where we're at as a country, and where we're at as Indigenous communities. And to be a part of it, you know, I've seen it half a dozen times now. It's emotional for me every single time, and really looking forward to you know, seeing the success that it has, and see the success that those directors have been having with the awards that we continue to win on the film festival circuit. I think we're over 10 now, but it just shows just how much people are getting behind this truth telling, this history and legacy of healing that we need to deal with as a country. One really cool thing that happened in that filming experience, when we had our screenings in community here at WLFN, we had 6 screenings over 3 days. We had a sacred fire, and we had cultural supports and health and wellness supports. We screened the film for all of the individuals in this region. And I was able to convince my dad to go. And he never goes to stuff like this. He never tells stories or talks about his experience at residential school. And he was really emotional after the film. Like, I was worried about him. And, you know, there was some stuff that needed to be done after the screening finished, so I wasn't able to get to him right away. And then I was really concerned because he was so emotional. And you know, I got into the truck and he was feeling a little bit better, but you could tell that it impacted him. It brought up a lot of memories, I think, that you know, he wasn't ready to deal with, both personally and probably in community, because it explained a lot of things for him. And we went to the sacred fire right afterwards, and our cultural team did this amazing job. They put all of our survivors around the fire in the middle of the circle, and then we drummed for them. We drummed probably for 30, 40 minutes straight, and this organic thing happened where they started, you know, talking and hugging, and just, this really neat moment happened where after we were done, I was feeling pumped and feeling really good about things. And my dad was happy. And on the drive home, he was saying, I don't remember the last time that I was a part of something like that. And it really uplifted him, and it put into perspective the importance of ceremony and culture and language. Um, that's something that as leaders we have to keep at the forefront of our conversations. You talk to a mining company about operating in the traditional territory, and making sure that we're providing an opportunity for ceremony and to hold up why the land is so important to the healing of our community. It doesn't need to come with animosity. It's something that we're going to continue to fight for as Indigenous leaders, because that's exactly what our community wants, what our elders wants, and what our ancestors would have wanted, by holding up and hanging on to, our rich history as Indigenous peoples when they fought through experiences like the Indian residential school system.
Oh, so well said.
And I think it's really important when, and again, diverting back, when we worked at Alltech, there were a lot of, we were the Indigenous Advancement Department, and when the 215 graves, the children came about, people are absolutely shocked. They've heard about this. They didn't never learn this in school, and I always think about this. So when we went to school, we learned about American history and we learned about Canadian history, but we never learned about what our children are learning right now, and where they're talking about it, and they're recognizing it. Because as a government, as a Canadian government, if you educate it, then you take accountability, and with accountability comes compensation. And people think that compensation is just monetary, and it's not. It's recognition, it's education, it's about embracing the fact that we have a really dirty history, but it's also about what you're doing with your own community, what my community in Seashell just did a few weeks ago. And that's recognizing all of the elders and bringing the people that were taken away back, and having a ceremony where we have children dancing and drumming, and we bring Indigenous and non-Indigenous people together to recognize the history. And it was very emotional for our community too. And I love the story of the fire, and would put it out to many different communities, just like you are, to recognize what happened, and to have that ceremony while the elders are still here, to recognize that their knowledge and the pain that they've gone through it's making a difference for our youth today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think one thing too that I just love about the two of you being high profile people is that you go through these difficult conversations, but you both keep it positive somehow, right? And you realize that, we can look back to learn, but let's move forward together and positively. And it's amazing to watch both of you do that in different ways.
Well, he's a lot younger than I am, so
We walk in
a
similar
lot
worlds.
younger. And so
You're wiser though.
oh yes, thank you. That comes with a decade or so above you. So being a political figure, an advocate, a leader, a sports phenomenal icon, educator, now documentary. This will be the first of many, I can imagine. I think you're a really amazing voice for the youth and where the youth are going now. Being a counselor at 23 years old, being a chief at 33 years old, and still keeping in shape and healing through sport and education and literacy and all of the many things that you do. What is your advice for young up and coming leaders that want to be taken seriously in the chiefs and councils or the ECDEV corps across the country, that don't think that their voices are being heard? What is your advice to them joining what you joined, whether it's chief and council or working for your nation, and really looking at the leaders?
I mean, the biggest piece of advice that I'd have for any young leader moving up would be, the first one would be to make sure that they're finding their balance. you need to be able to be healthy in order to do any of this political work or lobbying work or work for your community, because communities can be mean sometimes. People can be mean sometimes, and you have to be able to make sure that you're healthy, whether it's like for me, getting out and dip netting or uh, power dancing or playing hockey, hanging out with the family. I mean, those are very important parts for me, and it's going to be different for everybody else. Maybe it's reading a book and hanging out on the land or whatever it may be. So that first piece is finding that balance, but also making sure that you're passionate about what you're doing. I mean, your heart has to be in it. And in order to make change, you have to truly believe in what you're fighting for. And there's going to be people along the way, naysayers along the way, politicians along the way that are going to probably try to dismiss or discredit or, deter you from going down this path of what you believe in, and just don't listen to them. Please don't listen to them. Just make sure that you continue to fight, because when we look back at what our ancestors went through, what our survivors have went through and are still going through, they did that for us. And when we look forward into the future, our messaging and our visioning and our journey should be about that future generation, my kids and my grandkids, etc. And that's something that we don't necessarily hold up and do as young people. You know how it is. We're going to live forever. There's tons of time, but really, in the grand scheme of things, there isn't really much time, and we have to make sure that we're keeping ourselves healthy and doing what we love, but also being passionate and fighting for what we believe. And if I were to quit or stop doing what we do here at WLFN because of some negative comments or an individual that thinks I'm wrong, well, we would never see any progress. What does my favorite golfing buddy, Jason Gilbert, always say? Whether I duff one 20 feet or whether I put one on the green, it's always forward is good.
Nice.
Because forward is good, no matter how small of a step or how big of a step. Moving forward is all that we can hope for. Progress is good. And that's what we need to continue to hope for as well.
I think we can all take that advice and use it. And it's wonderful. That is so great. And I just want to say thank you so much. I'm so proud that you're a friend and colleague, and that everything you're doing for Canada and Indigenous communities, and you just support everyone, including us. So thank you so much.
Yes, and first and foremost, and true admiration for everything that you do, but first and foremost, you're a father and you're a family man, and you're just an incredible human. And thank you so much. The inspirational Chief Willie, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah.
No, thanks for having me. And we didn't talk about it much, but I'm big fans of you too as well. Keep up the great work that you're doing, not just for Indigenous peoples in this country, but non-Indigenous peoples tuning in and being a part of it. That educational piece isn't on my shoulders, it's on all of our shoulders, and you're a part of that too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Lair. Please follow us, download this episode, and follow us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and TikTok.